Right guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. In this one I'm just going to be showing you how to change the bearing in your Mavic quick release Freehub body. So that's a real running quick release, not disc. So let's go ahead, let's run through the steps. Right, so here we have the hub. Now if you've got a vice you can clamp it in a vice on the non-drive side. If you haven't got a vice then you can just do this on the floor, you don't need a vice to actually do this job. So what you want to do first is, if you're not holding it in a vice, then to undo this, so you're in a vice, you can just undo it with a 17mm spanner or a socket on there, like so. If it's not in a vice, you're doing it on the floor with the wheel, then what you want to do is just hold the centre with a 5mm hex head, and then you can undo the 17mm in the middle. Just hold it and then crack that undone, like that. So then you can remove the nut off the end, like so. So once you remove that, then you can lift up the Freehub body, like so. Just being careful when you lift it up that there's a washer up inside there that comes out, and it could just drop out on the floor without you realising it's dropped out. So up in there, like that. Sometimes it could just be stuck on there, so the best thing to do is slide it back on there and just leave it there, or put it somewhere safe so you don't lose it. Now we're ready for the next stage. Right, so the next step is to remove the nut that you can see there that's down inside the end of the Freehub where the lock ring would go on to hold your cassette. So if you haven't had yours off before, then what you can do is just stand it like that and just give it a spray with some penetrating oil around there, and just leave it to soak for 10 minutes before you attempt to undo it. So what you want to do is clamp this in the vice to undo it. Now if you haven't got a vice, then you can slide your cassette back over this, so your cassette's on there. Obviously you don't want to put the lock ring on because you need to get to the nut, but if you put the cassette back over here and then hold the cassette with your chain whip, then you can hold it so you can undo the nut in the middle. So if you haven't got a vice you can do that. If you've got a vice then you can just place it in using a pair of soft jaws so it doesn't damage it. So we just clamp that up in there, and like I say, if you leave it soaking for 10 minutes or so, if you haven't had yours apart before, and then what you want to do, 17mm socket, put that on there and undo it. Now if it doesn't come undone, you might be able to undo it a few turns to get it going, and then if it goes a bit tight then just reverse it and do it back up again, and then undo it again, and just do it bit by bit, because you don't want to damage the threads on this as you're trying to take it out. And also if you've got any dirt in the thread itself, then just get a small wire brush and just clean out the thread, because you can get some dirt build up in there over time with the grease mixed in with it, and it gets stuck in there and it just makes it hard to remove. So you just keep undoing it all the way out. You see, keep undoing it. It might be tight, it might be slack, it just depends. Like so. So there we have it. So now you'll see in the end of the Freehub, I'll just undo it so you can see it better. There's a bearing just there in the end, down in there. So go ahead and remove that. Right, so when it comes to removing the bearing out of there, you've got a couple of different options. Now, what you can do is obviously place it on a block of wood on a hard surface, then using a punch, just sit that on the bearing there, just give it a tap, left, right, crisscross pattern, tapping it out with a hammer, or you can get yourself a 8mm socket, like so, and then just place it down on top of the bearing there and use that and just knock it out. So depends what you want to do. Both ways work, so you can use whichever you want. So there's the bearing removed, simple as that. So what you want to do now is just clean up where the bearing sits, just wipe that around, make sure there's no old grease or dirt sat there. And then while you've got it like this, degrease and clean up where the thread is there, where your cassette lock ring goes on, where the nut will be threaded back on. Clean that up thoroughly so it makes it easier to thread that nut back on again. Right, so once you've got the Freehub all cleaned up, then you're ready to put the new bearing in. So first thing you want to do is always use quality bearings from well-known manufacturers. Don't be tempted to use any cheap ones because they just don't last. So always use quality bearings. Then what you want to do is get some grease and just put round where the bearing's gonna sit in there. Put smear on there, and then just coat the outside of the bearing with a little bit of grease, like so. And then what you want to do is just sit it in place. So rest it in there like that and just get it started. Just push it in place with your finger like that, just so it's actually sat there, it's not loose. And then once you've done that, then you can get yourself a 16mm socket, which is exactly the same size as the outside of the bearing. Never hit where the seal is, the coloured seal, the black seal on the bearing, because you'll damage it before you've even put it in. It's never hit there. So you just want to hold that like that on there, and I'll just tap it in. I'm not hitting it, I'm just literally tapping it in, going ever so easy. So I say you can use a press if you've got one, but if you haven't, then it's a job you can just do at home like this. No special tools needed whatsoever. Just check from time to time that it's going in straight. You're not hitting it in crooked, never hit it in crooked. So you have it, there's the bearing installed in the end. So ready to go ahead and refit it back onto the hub. Right, so while you've got the Freehub body off, just check that the two pulls that are sticking out are moving freely like that. Just check them, one either side. And then what you want to do, I'll just put a little bit of grease around there, like so. Then we'll put the washer back on, like that. And then what we do is just up inside the Freehub, we'll just put a bit of grease round in there, just over the face of the bearing up in there, and right up inside there, like that. I'll just put a little bit of grease over the teeth in there for the pulls, what they engage on. Just put a little smear over there, and then we slide it back on like so. And then what you've got to do is, to get it to engage back in there again, the two pulls one either side, you just got to push them back in so they go back in flush with the hub body. Then you can just slide the Freehub over like that. So once that's on there, what you want to do is just get some grease, put round over the bearing in the top there. Put a bit of grease over the top of that bearing, and then just a little bit where the threads are, where the lock ring's going to go, just put some grease over there. So obviously you've cleaned it all up, so you want a bit of grease over it. And then with your nut goes back on, just put a bit of grease around the outside of that on the threads, because this is aluminium and this is steel, so you just got to be careful with it. Just put it back on like that, and then what you got to do is start it off so as you're not cross threading it, so you can hold the Freehub and start it off so it's going in square, it's not going in crooked. Otherwise, if it is, you'll strip the threads on it. So you've got a fine thread on there. So let's get it started like that. Once you've got it started, you can wind it back in with your ratchet. So it should go in quite easily because you've cleaned the threads up. So just keep winding it all the way down. Like so, just until it stops. And then just hold on to it. And you can just tighten it up. If you over tighten it, all you'll do is strip the thread, because that nut is aluminium like I just said, and this is steel. So if you over tighten that, you'll strip the thread and it'll just be completely loose all the time, so it won't do up. So once you've tightened it up, then put a bit of grease on the thread, the axle there, and then put your nut back on like so. Just wind that down. Like that. And then what you can do is get your 17mm spanner and just hold it in the middle with 5mm like that, and just nip that up like so. And that's it back on there. New bearing. And you want to be checking that. You could check it yourself on your own one just to make sure that bearing isn't bad in there, because water gets in and it causes them to go bad pretty quickly. As you saw, it's only a very small bearing. So there's the steps complete for you, so I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more cycle related content. Till next one, ride safe and I'll see you then.